The space station floated like a silver jewel against the darkness of space. Hundreds of ships docked at its many ports, bringing traders and diplomats from across the galaxy. Inside the main hall, aliens of every shape and size moved through the crowds. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4. Some had scales, others had fur or smooth skin that changed colors. Dae-hyun stood near a window watching the stars. He wore a simple gray uniform that marked him as a merchant marine officer. His hands were rough from years of work on cargo ships. His face was calm, almost too calm. People often thought he was boring because he rarely smiled or showed much emotion. But his dark eyes noticed everything around him. Across the hall, Virathi towered over most of the crowd. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with deep blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Her people, the Korthans, were known across the galaxy as warriors. Thick muscle covered her arms and legs. A crest of bone-like ridges ran from her forehead down to her neck. She wore armor even here at a peaceful meeting. It was tradition for her kind. She was laughing with other Korthan warriors when she first saw him. The small human by the window, alone and quiet. Something about him caught her attention. Maybe it was the way he stood so still while everyone else rushed around. Maybe it was his eyes, which seemed old despite his young face. Their first conversation happened by accident. Virathi was walking to the trade negotiations when someone bumped into her from behind. She turned, ready to challenge whoever had been careless. But it was Dae-hyun, and he immediately bowed his head. "I apologize," he said in perfect Korthan language. "I was not watching my path." Virathi was surprised. Few humans bothered to learn Korthan speech. It was a difficult language, full of growls and clicking sounds that human throats struggled to make. Yet this small man spoke it clearly. "You speak my language," she said. "I work on trade routes. It helps to know many languages," he replied simply. She expected him to walk away, but he asked her about Korthan customs. He wanted to know the right way to greet her people during the negotiations. This impressed her. Most aliens thought Korthans were just brutal fighters who cared nothing for politeness. But Korthan culture had many complex rules about respect and honor. They talked for an hour, then another hour. Dae-hyun asked questions and listened carefully to her answers. He did not try to impress her with stories about himself. He did not boast or puff himself up like so many males did. He just listened. Over the next few weeks, they kept meeting. The trade summit lasted a month, and they spent much of that time together. Virathi showed him Korthan fighting forms in the training halls. Dae-hyun took her to the human district and introduced her to Earth foods. She found most of it too bland, but she ate it anyway because he had chosen it for her. "Why do humans eat such soft food?" she asked one evening, poking at a bowl of rice. "We have weak jaws compared to Korthans," Dae-hyun explained with a slight smile. "Our teeth are small. We are built differently." "Built weaker, you mean," she said, but she was teasing. At least she thought she was teasing. Something changed in his eyes then, just for a moment. But he only nodded and said, "Yes, weaker." They fell in love quickly, though neither understood exactly how it happened. Virathi had never felt such calm around another person. Most Korthans were loud and aggressive, always testing each other. Dae-hyun never challenged her. He simply accepted her as she was. When Dae-hyun asked her to marry him, Virathi said yes immediately. But their families were not happy. Virathi's mother came all the way from the Korthan homeworld. She was even larger than her daughter, with battle scars covering her arms. She took one look at Dae-hyun and snorted. "This is what you choose? This soft thing?" her mother asked in their language. "He looks like he would break in a strong wind." "He is kind and intelligent," Virathi said, feeling defensive. "Kind and intelligent," her mother repeated mockingly. "Can he protect you? Can he fight beside you if enemies come? Can he give you strong children?" "Not everything is about fighting, Mother." Her mother leaned close, her voice dropping low. "Everything is about fighting, daughter. The galaxy is not kind. You need a mate who can stand with you when trouble comes, and trouble always comes." Dae-hyun's family was gentler but equally worried. His sister spoke to him privately before the wedding. "Are you sure about this? Korthans are so different from us. Their culture values things we do not. What if she expects you to be something you are not?" "I know what I am doing," Dae-hyun said quietly. "Do you?" His sister pressed. "You have always been so private, so closed off." "Does she really know you?" Dae-hyun looked away. "She knows enough." The wedding happened despite all objections. It was held on the space station, with both human and Korthan traditions mixed together. Virathi wore white silk as humans did. but also carried a warrior's blade as Korthans did. Daehyun wore his best uniform and spoke his vows in her language. When it was done, they were married. Two completely different beings joined together. They moved to a colony world called New Haven. It was a frontier settlement, far from the established territories of either species. Here, humans and aliens lived side by side, building something new. The colony had farms and factories, schools and shops. It was peaceful, quiet, and safe. Daehyun found work managing supply routes for the colony. He spent his days behind a computer, tracking shipments and coordinating deliveries. Virathi joined the local security force. She trained with other fighters and patrolled the streets. Their home was small but comfortable. They learned to live together, two different species sharing space. Virathi had to duck through doorways built for humans. Daehyun had to get used to the sound of her sharpening her blades each evening. At night, they would lie together and talk. Virathi would tell stories of great Korthan battles. Daehyun would describe distant worlds he had visited during his years on cargo ships. She thought she knew him. She thought she understood what kind of person she had married, but she was wrong. She had no idea who Daehyun really was. None of them did, and soon she would learn the truth in the most terrible way possible. The first real crack in their marriage appeared on a warm evening, 6 months after they arrived at New Haven. Virathi and Daehyun had gone to a bar near the spaceport. It was a rough place where traders and dock workers gathered after their shifts. The air smelled of alcohol and sweat. Music played too loud from speakers in the corners. They sat at a corner table, sharing a meal. Virathi drank the strong Korthan liquor that could make a human sick. Daehyun sipped water. He rarely drank alcohol, another thing that made other males laugh at him. 3 Korthan traders entered the bar. They were loud and drunk already. Their armor was dirty from travel. They looked around the room like they owned it. When they saw Virathi sitting with Daehyun, they walked over. "Look at this," the largest one said in Korthan. "A warrior female wasting herself on a human." Virathi's spine straightened. "Walk away. We want no trouble." "No trouble?" Another trader laughed. "You bring shame to our people by mating with this weak thing. How can you stand to touch something so soft?" Daehyun set down his fork carefully. He looked at the traders with those calm, dark eyes. "We are just trying to eat. Please leave us alone." His voice was quiet and polite. The traders laughed harder. "It speaks," the third one said. "Tell me, little human, can you even lift her? Or does she carry you everywhere?" Virathi stood up fast, her chair scraping loudly. She was ready to fight. Her hand went to the blade she always carried. But Daehyun reached out and gently touched her arm. "Do not," he said softly. "They insult us both," she growled. "They are drunk and stupid. Fighting them proves nothing." The lead trader leaned close to Daehyun's face. "Are you afraid, human? Too weak to defend your female?" Daehyun looked up at him. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something cold and dangerous. But then it was gone, hidden behind that calm mask again. "I am not afraid," Daehyun said. "I just do not want to fight you." "Because you would lose," the trader sneered. "Perhaps," Daehyun said simply. That answer made Virathi's face burn with shame. "Perhaps." He admitted weakness so easily, like it meant nothing. A Korthan would never do that. A Korthan would fight to defend their honor even against bad odds. "Let us go," Daehyun said to her. He stood up and put credits on the table to pay for their meal. The traders blocked their path. "Running away, human?" "Moving away," Daehyun corrected. "There is a difference." He walked around them, not pushing, not challenging. Just walking. The traders let him pass, laughing at him. Virathi followed, her face hot with embarrassment. Everyone in the bar had seen. Everyone had watched her human mate back down from a fight. Outside, Virathi exploded. "How could you do that? How could you just walk away? What did you want me to do?" Daehyun asked calmly. "Fight." "Defend yourself." "Defend me!" Fighting 3 drunk traders proves nothing. I would probably lose, and then we would both have problems. The colony security would arrest all of us. "Is that what you wanted?" "I wanted you to stand up like a real male." The words came out before she could stop them. Daehyun went very still. "A real male? I did not mean..." Virathi tried to take it back, but the damage was done. "Yes, you did," Daehyun said quietly. "You meant exactly that." He walked toward their home. She followed, but they did not speak again that night. The incident spread through the colony's Korthan community quickly. Other Korthans looked at Virathi with pity. Some of her friends from the security force stopped calling her for training. She heard whispers when she walked past. Her human is so weak. She should have chosen a Korthan mate. What was she thinking? The shame ate at her. She began to see Daehyun differently. His quiet nature no longer seemed calm. It seemed passive, weak. When he came home from his office work, she found herself comparing him to the Korthan warriors she trained with. They were loud and strong, always ready to fight. Daehyun was soft-spoken and gentle, always trying to avoid conflict. One evening, another confrontation happened. A drunk colonist, not even Korthan, but some species Virathi did not recognize, stumbled into Daehyun on the street. The alien pushed Daehyun hard. "Watch where you walk, human." Daehyun caught his balance and said, "I apologize. I did not see you." "Pathetic," the alien spat and walked away. Virathi could not hold her anger anymore. "Why do you always apologize? Why do you always back down?" "Because fighting is not always the answer," Daehyun said tiredly. "Fighting is the only answer some beings understand." "Is that what you really think?" "Yes, and I think I made a mistake." The words burst out of her. "I thought you were different, but you are just weak. You are feeble. My mother was right." Daehyun stopped walking. His face showed no emotion, but something in his eyes went dead. "I see. I expected more from a mate," Virathi continued, unable to stop herself now. "I expected someone who could stand beside me, not hide behind me. I have never hidden behind you. You hide behind words and politeness and rules. You refuse to fight for anything." "That is not true," Daehyun said, and his voice was still quiet, still controlled. "But believe what you want." He walked ahead of her. That night he slept on the couch. She lay in their bed alone, feeling angry and justified and somehow also guilty. The distance between them grew over the following weeks. They spoke only about necessary things. "Where is the food? When will you be home?" Nothing personal, nothing warm. Their neighbor, an old Korthan named Kalseth, watched this happening. He was a veteran, retired from the Korthan military. He had lived on many worlds and seen many things. His body was covered in scars from countless battles. One day he found Virathi training alone in the colony's practice yard. She was hitting a training dummy with fierce, angry strikes. "You are angry at the wrong person," Kalseth said. Virathi stopped and looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You're human. You judge him for what he does not show you. But have you asked yourself why he is so controlled?" "Because he is weak," she said bitterly. Kalseth shook his head. "I have met many humans in my long life. I fought beside them once in a war before you were born. Let me tell you something about humans, young one. They are not like us. They do not show their teeth until they have to. More riddles, old one. Not riddles. Truth. Your mate keeps himself very carefully controlled. Ask yourself why. What is he controlling?" But Virathi did not want to hear it. She went back to hitting the dummy. Daehyun, for his part, withdrew even further. He spent longer hours at work. When he came home, he was polite but distant. Sometimes Virathi saw him staring at nothing, lost in thoughts he would not share. Once she saw scars on his body when he changed clothes, scars she had never noticed before. They were all over his back and arms. Some looked like knife wounds, others looked like burns. How had she never seen them before? "Where did you get those?" she asked. "Old injuries," he said and pulled on his shirt quickly. "From what?" "The past. It does not matter." But it did matter. She just did not know it yet. The colony was peaceful and safe. They had no idea that danger was coming. None of them did. Soon everything would change, and Virathi would learn exactly what kind of male she had married. The warning came on a quiet morning. Virathi was at the security station when the alarms went off. Every screen in the room suddenly showed the same message: "Threat detected. Raiders approaching system." The security chief, a stern human woman named Bora, immediately called an emergency meeting. Virathi joined the other security officers in the main conference room. Daehyun was there too, representing the logistics department. He sat quietly in the corner, taking notes on his tablet. "We have reports from 3 nearby colonies," Bora said, her face grim. "The Ravager clans are moving through this sector. They have attacked and looted 2 settlements already. Intelligence suggests we are next on their path." A hologram appeared in the center of the table. It showed a fleet of mismatched warships cobbled together from stolen military hardware. The Ravagers were not one species but many. Pirates, criminals, and outcasts from a dozen worlds. They raided frontier colonies for supplies, slaves, and anything valuable they could steal. How many ships? Someone asked. At least 3 capital ships and numerous smaller craft. Estimated ground forces are between 500 and 1,000 troops. The room went silent. New Haven had a security force of only 60 trained fighters. They had some weapons and defensive barriers, but nothing designed to stop a military assault. "We should evacuate," one officer said. "We cannot defend against those numbers." "Where would we go?" another argued. "The nearest safe colony is 3 weeks away. They would catch us in space." Arguments broke out around the table. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to run. A few suggested trying to negotiate or pay the raiders to leave them alone. Bora raised her hand for silence. "We need options. All of them. Defense plans, evacuation plans, anything." "I can help with evacuation," Daehyun said quietly from his corner. Everyone turned to look at him. Some officers rolled their eyes. What could a supply manager offer in a military crisis? "Speak," Bora said. Daehyun stood and activated his tablet. A map of the colony appeared on the hologram display. "We have 17 underground shelters built for storm protection. They can hold approximately 3,000 people. I can organize evacuation routes and supply distribution. If we move non-combatants underground, your security forces can focus on defense without worrying about civilian casualties." It made sense. Several people nodded. "And what about actually defending the colony?" one Korthan officer asked mockingly. "Will you organize supply crates to throw at the raiders?" Some people laughed. Virathi felt her face flush with embarrassment again. They were mocking her mate. Daehyun did not react to the insult. "I will help where I can. From behind a computer, I assume," the officer continued. "Leave the real work to actual warriors." "That is enough," Bora said sharply. "We need everyone's skills. Daehyun, you handle the evacuation plan. Security forces, we need defensive positions mapped out. We have perhaps 3 days before they arrive." The meeting broke up. Virathi tried to catch Daehyun's eye, but he left quickly without looking at her. Over the next 3 days, the colony transformed into a military camp. Security forces set up defensive barriers at key locations. Weapons were distributed to anyone who could use them. Virathi trained with the combat teams, preparing for the battle to come. She was good at this. Fighting was what Korthans did best. She felt useful, powerful, needed, not like in her marriage where she felt nothing but disappointment. Daehyun worked around the clock on his evacuation plan. He mapped every shelter, every route, every supply cache. He organized teams of volunteers to move food, water, and medical supplies underground. He created schedules showing exactly how to evacuate 3,000 civilians in under 2 hours. But Virathi barely noticed his work. She was focused on preparing for battle. On the 3rd night, she came home late from training. Daehyun was still awake, sitting at their table with maps and notes spread everywhere. He looked exhausted. "You should rest," she said. It was the first kind thing she had said to him in weeks. "Almost finished," he replied without looking up. She watched him work. His hands moved efficiently, marking routes and checking calculations. Even exhausted, he was focused and precise. "Why do you do this?" she asked suddenly. "Do what?" "All of this. The planning, the organizing. You could just focus on yourself. Make sure you are safe and let others worry about the colony." Daehyun finally looked up at her. "Is that what you think I should do?" "I do not know what you should do," she admitted. "I do not understand you at all." "No," he said quietly. "You do not. Then explain it to me. Help me understand why you are the way you are." For a moment, she thought he might actually open up. But then he looked back down at his maps. "Everyone has a role to play. This is mine. Hiding behind paperwork while others fight?" The words came out crueler than she meant. Daehyun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just kept working on his plans. Virathi left the room, frustrated and confused. Why could he not just be angry? Why did he never fight back, never defend himself? Kalseth found her on the street the next morning. The old Korthan was preparing his own weapons, cleaning an old rifle with practiced ease. "The battle comes," he said. "Yes," Virathi replied. "Your human has done good work with the evacuation plan. Many lives will be saved because of him. He does what he can," she said dismissively. Kalseth studied her with his old, scarred face. "You still do not see. You look at the tree without seeing its roots. More riddles, old one? Not riddles, warnings. He set down his rifle. I told you I fought beside humans once. It was in the border conflicts 40 years ago. Do you know what I learned about them? That they are weak? Verathy said bitterly. No, that they are terrifying. Humans do not fight like we do. Korthans charge into battle with honor and strength. Humans are different. They fight like the galaxy itself depends on it. They use every trick, every weapon, every advantage. They do not show mercy to enemies who threaten their loved ones. Daehyun is not like that. Are you certain? Kalsith asked. Or have you simply never seen him threatened enough? Before Verathy could answer, the alarm started wailing. The Ravager fleet had arrived early. They were already entering orbit. The invasion had begun. Everyone ran for their positions. Security forces rushed to defensive points. Civilians fled toward the shelters. The sky above filled with descending dropships, black against the clouds. Verathy grabbed her weapons and ran toward her assigned position. In the chaos, she looked back once toward the administration building where Daehyun had been working. He was standing in the doorway, watching the ships fall from the sky. Even from this distance, she could see his face. It was no longer calm, no longer peaceful. For the first time since she had known him, Daehyun looked dangerous. The first explosions lit up the morning sky. Dropships hammered the defensive barriers with heavy weapons, breaking through the colony's outer perimeter within minutes. Ravager troops poured out of the ships, a chaotic mix of species all armed with stolen military gear. Verathy fought with her security unit near the eastern gate. She was in her element, moving with lethal grace as she engaged the enemy. Her blade cut through one raider while her sidearm dropped two more. Around her, the security forces tried to hold the line, but the numbers were impossible. For every raider they killed, 3 more appeared. Fall back. Bora's voice crackled over the radio. All units, retreat to secondary positions. The security forces withdrew in good order, but they were being pushed back systematically. The Ravagers had real military experience. They used proper tactics, coordinating their attacks and overwhelming defensive positions with superior numbers. Verathy's unit retreated through the colony streets. Citizens ran past them toward the shelters. At least the evacuation plan was working. Daehyun's careful organization meant the civilians were getting to safety quickly, even in this chaos. Unit 3, we need support at the market square. Someone called over the radio. Verathy and 5 other fighters diverted to help. When they arrived, they found a group of civilians pinned down by raider fire. Without thinking, Verathy charged forward. She used an overturned vehicle for cover and returned fire, driving the raiders back long enough for the civilians to escape. But in the fight, she got separated from her unit. She found herself alone in a narrow alley, with raiders approaching from both ends. She fought hard, taking down 3 of them, but a 4th got close enough to slash her leg with a serrated blade. The pain was intense and immediate. She stumbled into a building to escape the remaining raiders. It was the Colonial Administration building, the same one where Daehyun had been working. She climbed to the 2nd floor and found a defensible room. Her leg was bleeding badly. She used strips from her uniform to bind the wound, but she could barely stand. Through the windows, she could see raiders moving through the streets below, many of them. Perhaps 20 or 30 securing the area around the building. She was trapped. Verathy tried her radio. This is Security Officer Verathy. I am trapped in the administration building. Need immediate support. All units are engaged, Bora's voice came back strained. Hold position. Help will come when possible. But Verathy knew there was no help coming. Everyone was fighting for their lives. She was on her own. She reloaded her weapon and prepared to make her last stand. Better to die fighting than surrender to raiders. At least she would take some of them with her. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. She aimed her weapon at the door, ready to fire. But the person who entered was not a raider. It was Daehyun. He looked different. He wore a battered combat vest over his clothes. He carried a rifle she had never seen before, old but well-maintained. His face was smeared with dirt and something that might have been blood. Daehyun, she said in shock. What are you doing here? You called for help, he said simply. He knelt beside her and examined her wounded leg. His hands were quick and efficient as he replaced her crude bandage with a proper medical wrap from a kit on his belt. You need to leave, Verathy said. There are too many of them. You will die here. Then we die together, he replied calmly. No, you are not a fighter. You are just... She stopped herself, but they both knew what she had been about to say. Just a weak human. Daehyun finished bandaging her leg. Can you walk? Barely. Then stay here. I will clear a path for us. Are you insane? There are at least 30 raiders out there. 24, he corrected. I counted on my way in. Before she could respond, he moved to the window. He studied the street below with focused intensity, like he was solving a complex puzzle. Then he pulled something from his vest. A small device with a red button. When this detonates, move to the north stairwell. Stay low. Do not stop moving until you reach the shelter on Merchant Street. Understand? What are you talking about? What is that? Insurance, he said. He pressed the button. 3 seconds later, an explosion rocked the building to the south. Virathi heard screams and shouts from the raiders below. They ran toward the explosion, thinking they were under attack from that direction. Now, Daehyun said. He helped her stand. They moved to the stairwell and began descending. Virathi expected to run into raiders any moment, but the way was clear. Daehyun had timed the explosion perfectly, drawing the enemy away from their escape route. They made it outside and into another alley, but then Virathi's leg gave out. She collapsed against a wall, breathing hard. Go, she told Daehyun. Save yourself. I will slow you down. No, I am ordering you to leave. You cannot order me, he said. You are not my commanding officer. You are my wife. A wife who has treated you with nothing but disrespect, Virathi said bitterly. Why would you risk your life for me? Daehyun looked at her with those dark, calm eyes. Because I love you. Even if you do not respect me, I love you. Before she could respond, raiders appeared at the end of the alley. 5 of them, all armed. They saw Daehyun and Virathi and raised their weapons. Stay down, Daehyun told her. He moved forward, not back. He moved toward the raiders. Virathi wanted to scream at him to stop, to not be. The battle for New Haven entered its second day as night fell. The colony was burning in places. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. The Ravager forces had taken control of most of the northern district, but the southern shelters remained secure. The security forces had managed to hold several key positions, creating a defensive perimeter around the civilian refuges, but the raiders were getting organized. Their commander, a massive creature from a species Virathi did not recognize, was bringing order to the chaos. The attacks were becoming more coordinated and more deadly. Virathi had refused to stay in the shelter. Her leg was bandaged and treated, good enough to walk if she was careful. She rejoined her security unit at a defensive position near the colony's main square. From here, she could see the administration district where raiders had set up a forward command post. We need to push them back, Bora said during a quick meeting. If they establish permanent positions, we will never retake the colony. We do not have the numbers, another officer argued. Then we need help. Where's the coalition response? Where are the Korthan warships? 2 days out at best, Bora said grimly. We need to hold until then. As they talked, reports kept coming in over the radio. Raider movements, attacks on defensive positions, civilian casualties. But mixed with these reports were other messages that made no sense. Raiders at grid position 7 are retreating. Unknown cause. Enemy command post at the market suffered explosions. Heavy casualties reported. Raider supply depot destroyed. Fire spreading. Each report described sudden devastating attacks on enemy positions. But no security units were taking credit for these actions. Someone else was out there, fighting a guerrilla war against the raiders. Virathi knew who it was. Daehyun. She tried calling him on his personal communicator, but there was no answer. She tried again and again throughout the night. Nothing. As dawn broke on the second day, a new report came in that changed everything. A squad of security forces had found something at one of the destroyed raider positions. They brought back equipment they had recovered. Explosive devices carefully crafted from common colony materials. Timer detonators. Remote triggers. All showing signs of expert construction. But it was the armor that made Virathi's heart stop. A piece of combat armor, black and battered, with a symbol painted on the shoulder. A symbol she recognized from history files. The mark of the Human Recon Pathfinder Corps. Elite Special Operations Forces who had fought in the Centauri conflicts 20 years ago. Soldiers who specialized in deep reconnaissance, sabotage, and unconventional warfare. Where did you find this? Bora asked, examining the armor piece. At the warehouse district. Someone hit the raider ammunition storage. Took out at least 30 enemies. One person did this? Someone asked skeptically. Tracks suggest a single combatant, the scout confirmed. Human-sized. moved through the area setting charges, then detonated them all at once. Bora looked at Virathi. Your husband was military? I did not know, Virathi said quietly. He never told me. The Pathfinder Corps, Kalseth said from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at the old veteran. I knew he had the look of a soldier. But Pathfinders? Those are not ordinary soldiers. They are weapons that look like men. What do you mean? Bora asked. During the Centauri conflicts, I fought alongside human forces. The Pathfinders were legends even then. They operated alone or in tiny teams deep behind enemy lines. They could survive for months with no support, living off the land and enemy supplies. They sabotaged supply lines, assassinated enemy leaders, spread terror and confusion. One Pathfinder team of 3 soldiers held an entire enemy battalion at bay for 2 weeks. The enemy never even saw them, just kept dying to traps and snipers. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. If he is Pathfinder trained, Kalseth continued, then he is out there right now making the raiders' lives into a nightmare. They probably think they are being attacked by dozens of enemies. They have no idea it is just one small human. Virathi felt something twist in her chest. All this time she had thought her husband was weak. She had mocked him for avoiding fights, for choosing peace over violence. But he had not been weak. He had been choosing not to be the weapon he was trained to be. We need to coordinate with him, Bora said. If he is hitting raiders on his own, we can use that to our advantage. They tried calling Daehyun on every frequency. No response. He was maintaining radio silence, just like special operations forces were trained to do. He was a ghost in the ruins of the colony, visible only through the destruction he left behind. More reports came in throughout the day, each one describing impossible things. A raider patrol of 12 soldiers, all eliminated silently in their sleep. A supply convoy destroyed by precision explosive charges. An enemy sniper nest taken out. The sniper killed with his own rifle. Water supplies poisoned, forcing raiders to waste time searching for clean sources. False radio messages spreading confusion through Raider Command. The Ravager commander was getting frustrated and angry. Virathi could see it in how the enemy forces moved. They were jumpy, shooting at shadows. They wasted ammunition on false targets. Their patrols moved in larger groups, which made them slower and easier to track. One person was breaking their entire invasion plan. One quiet, unassuming human who spoke softly and avoided fights. When night fell again, Virathi made a decision. She left her security unit and went looking for Daehyun. She knew it was dangerous and maybe stupid, but she needed to see him. Needed to talk to him. Needed to apologize for every cruel thing she had ever said. She moved carefully through the dark streets, using skills she had learned in Korthan military training. She followed the signs of Daehyun's passage. Disturbed ground where he had set traps, scorch marks from explosives, blood from enemies he had killed. She found him finally in an abandoned warehouse near the spaceport. He was sitting against a wall checking his rifle. His clothes were torn and dirty. Blood covered his hands and face, though she could not tell if it was his or someone else's. He looked exhausted, running on nothing but determination. Daehyun, she said softly. He looked up, startled. His hand went to his weapon before he recognized her. Then he lowered it slowly. You should not be here, he said. His voice was rough from exhaustion. I came to find you, to help you. I do not need help. Everyone needs help, Virathi said. She moved closer and sat down beside him. I was wrong about you. About everything. This is not the time. Please, let me say this. She took a deep breath. I thought you were weak because you chose peace. I thought you were afraid because you avoided fights. I was wrong. You were not weak. You were strong enough to control what you really are. Daehyun was quiet for a long moment. What I really am, he repeated softly. Do you know what that is? What they made me into? A Pathfinder. A soldier. A weapon, he corrected. They took young people and trained us to kill efficiently. To survive behind enemy lines. To spread fear and destruction. We were not soldiers. Soldiers fight battles. We were something else. Something designed to haunt the enemy's nightmares. But you left that behind. I tried to. When the Centauri conflicts ended, I was done. I swore I would never kill again unless I had no choice. I became a merchant marine because it was peaceful. I learned to use words instead of weapons. I tried to be normal. You are not a weapon, Daehyun. You are a person who was trained as a weapon. There is a difference. He looked at her and she saw the exhaustion and pain in his eyes. Is there? Look at what I'm doing now. The moment my home was threatened, I became exactly what they trained me to be. All that control, all that peace, it was just a surface. Underneath, I am still a killer. You are a protector, Virathi said firmly. You are protecting our colony. Protecting me even though I treated you terribly. You did not know what I was. I should have known you. Should have seen you. Should have trusted that you had reasons for the way you are. She reached out and took his hand. It was rough and scarred and stained with blood. I am sorry. For every cruel word, every doubt, every moment I made you feel less than you are. I am sorry. Daehyun's hand tightened around hers. You were not completely wrong. I am not like Korthan warriors. I do not have your people's honor or directness. I fight dirty. I use tricks and traps. I kill people who never see me coming. Because that is how you save lives, Virathi said. Every raider you stop is one less threat to our people. You are winning this battle for us, one action at a time. The battle is not over. Their commander is still alive. As long as he lives, they will keep fighting. Then we end him together, Virathi said. No, this is my work. My burden. Our burden, she corrected. I am your wife. We face this together or not at all. Daehyun studied her face. Then slowly he nodded. Together. They sat in the darkness, holding hands, preparing for what was to come. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation. But tonight, in this quiet moment, they were finally united. The third day dawned with fire in the sky. The Ravager commander had decided to end this. He was tired of losing soldiers to an invisible enemy. He gathered his remaining forces, nearly 200 fighters, and prepared for a final assault on the southern shelters where the colonists hid. Daehyun and Virathi watched from a rooftop as the raiders assembled in the colony's main square. They formed up in organized units, checked their weapons, and prepared to move out. At the center of this force stood their commander, a massive creature that towered over even the largest Korthan. His armor was covered in trophies from previous raids. Weapons hung from his belt. He shouted orders in a harsh, clicking language that echoed through the morning air. That is a lot of enemies, Virathi said. Yes, Daehyun agreed. He was marking positions on a small tablet, creating a tactical map of the square. What is your plan? Slow them down. Disrupt their formation. Give the colonists time to prepare for evacuation. That is not a plan. That is a suicide mission. Daehyun smiled, but it was a sad smile. Maybe, but it is the only option we have. Coalition forces are still a day away. If the raiders reach the shelters before then, everyone dies. Then I fight with you. No, your leg is still injured. You will slow me down. I will not let you die alone. Virathi grabbed his arm. Do you not understand? I cannot lose you, not now. Not after finally seeing who you really are. Daehyun looked at her and his eyes were soft. I have been prepared to die for a long time. Since the conflicts ended, I have been carrying guilt for things I did. Things I can never take back. Maybe this is how I make peace with that past. By saving people instead of just destroying things, you have nothing to feel guilty about. You were a soldier. You did what you had to do. I did more than I had to, he said quietly. That is the problem. But right now, none of that matters. What matters is keeping everyone safe. He stood up and checked his weapons. His rifle was running low on ammunition. He had only 3 explosive devices left, a handful of traps prepared throughout the approach to the shelters. It was not enough to stop 200 enemies, but he would try anyway. Virathi pulled out her communicator and called Bo-Ra. This is Virathi. The raiders are preparing a final assault. Approximately 200 fighters, heavily armed. Evacuate the shelters immediately. Get everyone to the spaceport. Seal yourselves in the cargo ships if you have to. What about you? Bo-Ra asked. We are buying you time. We? Who is we? My husband and I, Virathi said. She looked at Daehyun and saw approval in his eyes. We will hold them as long as we can. She ended the call before Bo-Ra could argue. Then she stood beside Daehyun and checked her own weapons. Her leg throbbed with pain, but she could walk. She could fight. And she would not let her husband face this alone. Ready? Daehyun asked. Ready? They moved down from the rooftop and positioned themselves along the raiders' route to the shelters. Daehyun had prepared the battlefield carefully over the past 2 days. He had placed traps at key intersections. He had weakened structures so they would collapse with the right trigger. He had stockpiled weapons and ammunition in hidden caches throughout the area. The raider force began to move. 200 warriors marching through the streets with weapons ready. They were confident now, staying in formation, watching for ambushes. They did not see the first trap until it was too late. Daehyun triggered an explosive device as the front ranks passed a narrow alley. The blast brought down the building on either side, crushing a dozen raiders and blocking the street with rubble. The formation broke apart in confusion. Before they could regroup, Daehyun opened fire from a concealed position. His shots were precise, targeting squad leaders and heavy weapons operators. Virathi fired from a different angle, creating the impression of multiple attackers. The raiders scattered, taking cover and trying to locate their enemies. But Daehyun and Virathi were already moving, relocating to new positions. This was guerrilla warfare at its finest. Hit and fade, never stay in one place. Never let the enemy pin you down. They led the raiders on a deadly chase through the colony streets. Every intersection brought new dangers. Tripwires that triggered shotgun traps, improvised mines hidden under debris, buildings rigged to collapse. The raiders' numbers slowly decreased as they advanced, but they kept coming. Driven forward by their commanders' shouted orders, Daehyun and Virathi worked together like they had been fighting as a team for years. He would draw the enemy into kill zones and she would hit them from unexpected angles. She would create noise and distraction, and he would use the confusion to reposition. They communicated with hand signals and brief words, understanding each other instinctively. But two people could only do so much. The raiders kept advancing, sacrificing soldiers but gaining ground. They reached the final intersection before the shelter district. One more street, and they would be at the shelter entrances where 3,000 colonists huddled in fear. Daehyun and Virathi stood in that intersection, blocking the way. Behind them, the street leading to the shelters. In front of them, nearly 150 raiders who had survived the gauntlet. "This is it," Daehyun said quietly. "This is it," Virathi agreed. The Ravager commander pushed through his troops to the front. He looked at the two small figures blocking his path and laughed. It was a horrible sound like metal scraping on stone. "Two fighters?" he said in broken trade language. "Two fighters against my army? Surrender and I will make your deaths quick." "No," Daehyun said simply. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then you die slow." He raised his arm to signal the attack. But before he could bring it down, Daehyun triggered his last trap. The buildings on either side of the intersection exploded outward, dropping tons of rubble into the street. Raiders screamed as they were crushed or buried. The dust was so thick it was impossible to see. In that chaos, Daehyun and Virathi attacked. They went straight into the enemy force, using the confusion to their advantage. They fought side by side, protecting each other's backs. Virathi used her blade and strength to cut through enemies. Daehyun used his rifle as a club when he ran out of ammunition, then switched to his knife when the rifle broke. They killed and kept killing. But there were too many. For every raider they dropped, two more took their place. They were being surrounded, overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Virathi took a hard hit to her injured leg and went down. Daehyun stood over her, protecting her with his own body. He fought with desperate strength, but even he was getting tired. Blood ran from a dozen wounds. His breath came in ragged gasps. The Ravager commander waded through his own troops to reach them. He swung a massive hammer-like weapon at Daehyun's head. Daehyun dodged, but the weapon clipped his shoulder and sent him sprawling. He tried to get up, but his body would not respond. Too much damage, too much exhaustion. The commander raised his weapon for a killing blow. Virathi screamed Daehyun's name. Then the sky opened up with light. Korthan warships had arrived early. They dropped into orbit and immediately began orbital bombardment of raider positions. Massive energy weapons turned the Ravager ships into debris. Drop pods fell from the sky, carrying Korthan Marines in full combat armor. The raiders broke. They had been willing to fight colonists and two desperate defenders, but they could not stand against a full military assault. They scattered and ran, dropping weapons and fleeing for whatever ships remained. The Ravager commander roared in fury, but he too was forced to retreat. He took one last look at Daehyun, as if memorizing his face, then fled with his surviving troops. Korthan Marines secured the area quickly. Medical teams rushed forward to treat the wounded. Virathi held Daehyun's head in her lap as medics worked on his injuries. He had multiple broken bones, deep cuts and burns, but he was alive. "You are such an idiot," Virathi whispered through tears, "fighting 200 enemies. What were you thinking?" "That I love you," Daehyun said weakly. and that I would do anything to keep you safe. I love you too, she said. I should have told you sooner. Should have seen you sooner. I love you, you ridiculous, terrifying, beautiful human. He smiled, then lost consciousness. The medics rushed him to the medical ship in orbit. Virathi went with him, refusing to leave his side. 2 weeks later, Daehyun woke up in a hospital bed. The room was quiet and clean, nothing like the chaos and blood of the battle. His body ached, but the pain was distant, held back by medication. Medical equipment hummed softly around him. Virathi sat in a chair beside the bed. She had been there every moment since he had been admitted. Now she was sleeping, her head resting on the edge of his bed, her hand holding his. He gently squeezed her hand. She woke immediately, her eyes going wide. Daehyun? You are awake. I am awake, he confirmed. His voice was rough from disuse. She called for doctors who came and examined him. They ran tests and checked his injuries. Everything was healing well. He had been lucky. Broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, multiple lacerations, and severe exhaustion, but nothing permanent. He would recover fully. When the doctors left, Virathi and Daehyun were alone again. They looked at each other for a long moment. I am sorry, they both said at the same time. You first, Daehyun said. Virathi took his hand in both of hers. I am sorry for everything. For judging you without knowing you. For mocking you and calling you weak. For being too blind to see the person you really are. You saved my life and the lives of everyone in the colony. You are the bravest, strongest person I have ever known. I am not brave, Daehyun said quietly. Brave people face their fears. I was just doing what I was trained to do. No, you were choosing to be more than your training. You were choosing to protect people, not just kill enemies. That is what makes you different from a weapon. You choose love instead of violence, even though you know how to use violence. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. After the Centauri conflicts, I thought I could leave that life behind. I thought I could be normal. But the moment you were in danger, all of it came back. The training, the instincts, the willingness to kill. I did things during that battle that haunt me. I killed people who were just following orders, just trying to survive. I became exactly what I swore I would never be again. You became a protector, Virathi said firmly. Those raiders chose to attack innocent people. They chose violence. You simply answered with the only language they understood. That does not make you a monster. That makes you someone willing to do hard things to save others. You do not know some of the things I did. During the conflicts, I mean. The missions we ran were not honorable or clean. We assassinated people. We destroyed civilian infrastructure. We did whatever the mission required. You were a soldier in a war, Virathi said. War is never clean or honorable. But you survived and came out the other side choosing peace. That means something. Daehyun looked at her and his eyes were wet. I do not know how to live with what I have done, both then and now. You live with it by being who you are, by choosing kindness when you could choose cruelty, by building instead of destroying, by loving instead of hating. She leaned close and kissed his forehead, and by letting the people who love you help carry the burden. You really love me? Even knowing what I am? I love you because of what you are, all of it. The gentleman who learns languages and avoids fights. The warrior who protects those who cannot protect themselves. The person who chooses peace but stands ready for war. All of you. They held each other for a long time, both of them crying quietly. Years of misunderstanding and pain finally healing. Over the following days, other visitors came. Bora came and thanked him for saving the colony. She offered him a position with colonial security, but he declined. He did not want to be a soldier anymore. Kalseth came and sat with him for an hour, not saying much, just keeping him company. Before he left, the old Korthan said, You fought well, human. You honored your training and yourself. I just did what I had to do, Daehyun said. That is what warriors say when they are too humble to accept praise. Kalseth replied with a slight smile. The colony leadership gave Daehyun medals and honors. They called him a hero. He accepted them politely but put them away in a drawer. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. But the recognition had an unexpected effect. The Korthan community in the colony, which had once looked down on Virathi's choice of mate, now treated him with deep respect. They had seen what he could do. They understood now that human strength looked different from Korthan strength, but it was no less real. Virathi's mother sent a message from the Korthan homeworld. It was brief and formal, as was the Korthan way. I judged incorrectly. Your mate has honor. This I acknowledge. For Virathi's proud mother, this was practically a passionate apology. When Daehyun was finally released from the hospital, he and Virathi returned to their home. It had been damaged during the battle but was now repaired. They walked through the door together, both of them moving slowly because of healing injuries. "So what now?" Virathi asked. "Now we live," Daehyun said. "We rebuild. We try to be happy. Can you be happy? After everything?" He thought about it. "I do not know. But I would like to try. With you." They sat together on their couch looking out the window at the colony. Construction crews were already rebuilding damaged buildings. Ships came and went from the spaceport. Life was returning to normal, slowly but surely. "Tell me about your past," Virathi said. "The real story. Not the painful parts if you do not want to share them yet. But tell me how you became who you are." So Daehyun talked. He told her about joining the military as a young man, looking for purpose. About the brutal training that turned ordinary soldiers into pathfinders. About missions behind enemy lines during the Centauri conflicts. About friends lost and enemies killed and the moral compromises that war demanded. He told her about the day the conflicts ended and how lost he had felt. What do you do when you have been trained for war and suddenly there is peace? How do you become normal when you know how to kill in 100 different ways? He told her about choosing to become a merchant marine, about learning to use words instead of weapons, about trying to build a life that had nothing to do with violence. And Virathi listened. She did not judge or interrupt. She just listened, holding his hand, occasionally wiping away tears from both their faces. When he finished, she said, "Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for wanting to know." "I have something to tell you too," Virathi said. "About Korthan culture and why I was so harsh with you. I want you to understand where my cruelty came from, not to excuse it, but so we can move forward together." So she talked. She told him about growing up in a warrior culture where showing weakness meant becoming a target. About how Korthan children were trained from birth that strength was everything. About how choosing a mate outside your species was seen as betrayal, as abandoning your people's values. She told him about the pressure from her family and clan, about how every time he chose peace over violence, she felt that pressure growing heavier. She had been terrified that her people were right, that she had made a terrible mistake, that she would end up alone and shamed. "But I was the one who made the mistake," she said. "I let fear and pride blind me to who you really were. I projected my culture's values onto you and found you wanting, but your values are not less than mine. They are just different." They talked for hours, sharing their histories and their pains and their hopes. They talked until the sun set and rose again. They talked until they understood each other completely. In the days that followed, they fell into new routines. Daehyun went back to his logistics work, but he also started teaching at the colony's school. He taught students about different cultures, about peaceful conflict resolution, about understanding people who were different from you. Virathi continued her security work, but she changed how she approached it. She learned from Daehyun that sometimes words prevented more violence than weapons ever could. She became known as a fair and thoughtful officer, not just a strong fighter. They also started teaching together, offering classes on cross-cultural understanding. They used their own relationship as an example of how beings from different worlds could find common ground. One evening, they were walking through the colony together. Daehyun was still moving slowly, his injuries not completely healed. Virathi matched his pace, no longer embarrassed by his apparent weakness. "Do you ever regret marrying me?" she asked suddenly. Daehyun stopped and looked at her with surprise. "Never, not even once. Even when things were bad between us, I never regretted you. Not even when I called you feeble. Not even then. I knew you did not understand. I hoped you would someday. And now you do. I understand that you are dangerous and choose not to be. I understand that gentleness backed by strength is more powerful than aggression. I understand that my husband is remarkable." She smiled at him. "But do you understand something?" "What?" "That you do not have to be perfect. That you can be angry and hurt and scared. That you can show me all the parts of yourself, not just the controlled ones." Daehyun thought about this. "I am still learning that. It is hard for me to show emotion. The training taught us to bury everything that might distract us from the mission. Then I will help you unlearn that. We will figure it out together." They continued walking. Children ran past them, playing some game. Merchants called out their wares. Above them, ships came and went from the spaceport.